The night was cold and quiet as Officer Mark drove slowly through the empty streets. Snow covered the road and made everything look still and heavy. The street lights reflected softly on the white ground. Mark had worked many late nights before, but this night felt different. The air felt sharper, and the silence felt deeper. Beside him sat Rex, his K9 partner. Rex was a strong and disciplined dog with dark fur and alert eyes. Rex had been trained for years and trusted his instincts more than anything. Mark trusted Rex with his life. They had worked together for a long time and had faced many difficult situations. As the patrol car moved forward, Rex suddenly lifted his head. His ears stood straight, and his body became tense. Mark noticed the change right away. Rex did not react without reason. Mark slowed the car and looked around carefully. Rex let out a low sound and pulled gently toward a narrow street near an old warehouse. The place looked empty and forgotten. Snow piled against broken walls and old doors. Mark parked the car and stepped out into the cold. The wind hit his face, and his breath turned into white clouds. Rex moved ahead slowly, sniffing the ground. His steps were careful and focused. Mark followed behind, watching Rex closely. The sound of their footsteps echoed softly in the empty space. The alley felt colder than the open street. Near the back of the warehouse, Rex stopped. He lowered his head and sniffed a pile of snow near some old boxes. Then he began to dig gently with his paws. Mark felt his chest tighten as he moved closer. Rex let out a soft sound, not loud, not sharp, but full of concern. Mark knelt beside him and brushed the snow away. Under the snow lay something small and still. At first, Mark could not understand what he was seeing. It was a tiny puppy. The puppy was covered in snow and ice. Its fur was stiff, and its body did not move. The puppy looked frozen and forgotten. Mark's heart sank as he reached out slowly. He touched the puppy carefully and felt a faint warmth. The puppy was alive. Mark took a sharp breath and quickly removed his coat. He wrapped the puppy inside it, holding it close to his chest. The puppy barely moved, but its chest rose slowly. Rex stood close, watching with deep focus. Mark spoke softly, even though the puppy could not respond. His voice trembled as he tried to keep calm. He stood up and rushed back to the patrol car. Rex stayed close to his side the whole time. Inside the car, Mark turned the heater on high. He placed the puppy on the seat and wrapped it with his coat and a blanket. Rex sat beside the puppy, his body warm and steady. The car filled with warm air, but time felt slow. Mark watched the puppy closely, hoping for any sign of movement. The puppy's body was weak, and its eyes stayed closed. Mark felt helpless, but he refused to give up. He had seen Rex save people before, and now Rex had saved a life again. As the car drove toward the station, Mark kept one hand near the puppy. His thoughts raced with worry and hope. He had no idea how long the puppy had been out in the cold. Every second mattered. At the station, Mark carried the puppy inside carefully. The building was quiet, and most of the lights were dim. Mark found clean towels and a small heater. He placed the puppy near the warmth and wrapped it gently. Rex lay down beside the puppy, placing his head close. He did not move or rest. His eyes stayed on the puppy as if guarding it. Mark watched Rex and felt a deep respect grow inside him. Minutes passed slowly. The puppy remained still. Mark rubbed the puppy gently with the towel to help bring warmth back. His hands shook as he worked. He whispered words of comfort, hoping the puppy could feel them. Then something small happened. The puppy's paw moved slightly. Mark froze and leaned closer. His heart began to race. He watched carefully, afraid to blink. The puppy made a tiny sound, barely audible, but real. Rex lifted his head and wagged his tail once. Mark felt his eyes fill with tears. He stayed focused and continued warming the puppy. The puppy's breathing became a little stronger. The small body moved just enough to give hope. Mark knew the puppy needed more help than he could give. He called a nearby animal clinic and explained the situation. The voice on the phone told him to bring the puppy in carefully and keep it warm. Mark wrapped the puppy again and prepared to leave. Rex stood up and followed closely. The bond between them felt stronger than ever. They were not just officers and partners. They were protectors. As the patrol car drove through the snowy streets again, Mark looked at Rex through the mirror. Rex met his eyes calmly. Mark felt a deep sense of trust and gratitude. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if the puppy would fully recover. But he knew one thing for sure. This night would never be forgotten. The patrol car stopped in front of the animal clinic as snow continued to fall quietly. Officer Mark stepped out carefully with the small puppy wrapped tightly in his coat. The building looked warm and bright compared to the dark street outside. Rex jumped down from the car and stayed close to Mark's leg. Inside the clinic, the air felt warm and clean. A woman at the front desk looked up and quickly understood the situation. She guided Mark to a treatment room without asking many questions. Time felt slow as Mark followed her. A vet entered the room and gently took the puppy from Mark's arms. The puppy was placed on a soft table under a warm light. The vet moved carefully and spoke in a calm voice. Mark stood still, watching every movement. Rex lay down near the table and did not look away. His eyes followed the puppy closely. The vet checked the puppy's breathing and heart. The puppy was weak but still fighting. The vet explained that the puppy had been exposed to extreme cold for a long time. The puppy's body was slowly warming up, but it would take time. Mark listened closely and nodded. His hands were tight at his sides. The puppy made a small sound again. Mark leaned forward slightly. The sound was weak, but it was enough to fill the room with hope. Rex lifted his head and stayed alert. The vet wrapped the puppy in special warm covers and placed it inside a heated area. The puppy's breathing slowly became steadier. Mark finally allowed himself to breathe normally again. After some time, the vet stepped back and smiled gently. The puppy would survive. The words felt heavy and light at the same time. Mark felt his chest tighten with emotion. Mark stepped outside the room and leaned against the wall. He closed his eyes for a moment. The stress of the night slowly caught up to him. Rex stood beside him quietly. Mark placed his hand on Rex's head and rubbed gently. Rex looked up at him with calm eyes. There was no excitement, only understanding. Mark felt grateful beyond words. The vet returned and explained the next steps. The puppy would need care and rest for several days. The clinic would keep the puppy safe and warm. Mark agreed without hesitation. Before leaving, Mark walked back into the room. The puppy lay still but looked more peaceful. Its tiny chest moved slowly with each breath. Mark whispered softly, promising it would be okay. Rex walked closer and sat near the table. The puppy moved slightly as if sensing Rex. Mark noticed and smiled faintly. Something special had already formed between them. The next morning, Mark returned to the clinic before his shift. Snow still covered the ground, but the sky was brighter. He felt tired, but his steps were quick. Inside the clinic, the vet greeted him with good news. The puppy had eaten a little and moved more during the night. Mark felt relief wash over him. Rex wagged his tail slowly. Mark visited the puppy every day after that. Each visit showed small improvements. The puppy opened its eyes. The puppy tried to lift its head. Each moment felt like a victory. Rex joined Mark whenever possible. The puppy reacted strongly to Rex's presence. Its tail moved slightly when Rex was near. Rex stayed gentle and calm, never pushing too close. The clinic staff noticed the bond growing. They watched as Rex lay quietly while the puppy rested. Mark often stood nearby, feeling something change inside him. Mark had spent years focusing only on duty. His life had been filled with long nights and quiet mornings. The puppy brought a new feeling into his routine. One afternoon, the vet spoke to Mark privately. The puppy had no owner. It had likely been abandoned. Mark felt sadness but also clarity. The vet asked if Mark had thought about adoption. Mark did not answer right away. He looked through the glass at Rex and the puppy. His heart already knew the answer. Mark nodded slowly. He would adopt the puppy when it was strong enough. The decision felt right. It felt complete. When Mark shared the news with the clinic staff, they smiled warmly. They told him the puppy was lucky. Mark shook his head gently. He believed he was the lucky one. Days continued to pass. The puppy grew stronger and more active. It tried to stand and walk. Sometimes it stumbled, but it kept trying. Rex encouraged the puppy without force. He stayed nearby, offering quiet support. Mark watched them and felt peace. One evening, Mark stood outside the clinic as the sun set. The sky glowed softly. He thought about that frozen night again. Everything had changed since then. Mark realized that Rex had not just followed training. Rex had followed his heart. That thought stayed with Mark. The puppy would soon come home. A new chapter was about to begin. The day finally came when the puppy was ready to leave the clinic. Officer Mark arrived early that morning with Rex by his side. The clinic felt familiar now, almost like a second home. The staff greeted Mark with smiles and warm words. The puppy looked much stronger than before. Its eyes were bright, and its small body moved with more confidence. The vet gently placed the puppy on the floor. The puppy took a few slow steps and then stopped. Rex lowered his head and stayed still. The puppy walked toward Rex and touched its nose against his paw. Rex did not move. He allowed the puppy to feel safe. Mark watched the moment quietly. His chest felt full. This small life had survived because of Rex. Mark knew this bond was real. The vet handed Mark the puppy and gave final instructions. The puppy would need care, warmth, and patience. Mark listened carefully and thanked everyone. His voice carried deep respect. Mark carried the puppy outside. The cold air touched its fur, but it was protected now. Rex walked proudly beside them. The patrol car door opened, and a new journey began. At home, Mark prepared a small bed near the heater. He placed the puppy down gently. The puppy sniffed the area and looked around with curiosity. Everything was new. Rex lay down nearby. He watched without interfering. The puppy moved closer to Rex and curled beside him. Rex stayed still and calm. Mark sat on the floor and watched them. The room felt warmer than ever. The silence was peaceful. The puppy slept deeply that first night. Rex did not leave its side. Mark checked on them many times. Each time, he smiled softly. Days passed, and the puppy grew stronger. It followed Rex everywhere. It tried to copy his movements. Rex became a quiet teacher. Rex showed the puppy how to walk calmly. He showed how to sit and wait. The puppy watched closely and learned quickly. Mark named the puppy Snow. The name felt right. Snow had come from the cold but brought warmth instead. Snow learned the sounds of the house. Snow learned Mark's voice. Snow learned that Rex was safety. Mark's routine slowly changed. Mornings felt lighter. Evenings felt calmer. Snow filled the empty spaces. At work, Mark found himself smiling more. His co-workers noticed the change. He shared Snow's story carefully. They listened with interest and respect. Many looked at Rex differently after hearing it. Rex remained the same calm partner. One evening, Mark returned home tired after a long shift. Snow ran toward him with excitement. Rex followed at a steady pace. Mark knelt down and let Snow climb onto his lap. Snow's tail moved happily. Mark laughed quietly. Rex sat nearby, watching. His eyes were gentle. Mark felt gratitude rise again. Snow faced challenges too. Some nights Snow cried softly. Mark stayed close and comforted him. Rex stayed beside Snow without leaving. Snow slowly learned confidence. Snow explored more. Snow trusted fully. Rex corrected Snow gently when needed. There was never force, only guidance. Mark noticed how careful Rex was. Rex never pushed Snow too far. Rex understood patience. The bond between them grew stronger each day. Mark felt proud watching them. One afternoon, Mark took Rex and Snow outside together. Snow walked carefully on the ground. Rex stayed close. Snow stumbled once but stood again. Rex waited calmly. Mark encouraged Snow softly. Neighbors noticed them and smiled. Some asked about Snow. Mark shared parts of the story. Snow became a symbol of survival. Rex became a symbol of quiet strength. Mark felt something change deep inside. His world felt fuller. Late one night, Mark sat alone in the living room. Rex and Snow slept nearby. Mark thought about the frozen alley. He remembered how close Snow had been to losing everything. He remembered Rex's alert and concern. That memory shook him. Mark felt his eyes fill. He did not fight it. Tears rolled quietly down his face. Not from sadness. From gratitude. Rex lifted his head and looked at Mark. Snow stirred slightly. Mark wiped his face and smiled. He realized that Rex had given him more than partnership. Rex had shown him compassion. Snow had given him purpose beyond duty. Snow had given him warmth. That night, Mark understood that his life had changed forever. And the journey was not over yet. The weeks passed quietly as Snow became part of the home. Officer Mark adjusted his life around the small puppy and his loyal partner Rex. Each morning began with calm moments and gentle sounds. The house felt alive in a new way. Snow grew stronger with each passing day. His steps became steady and confident. His eyes were full of curiosity and trust. Rex stayed close, always aware and patient. Mark noticed how Snow watched Rex closely. Snow copied how Rex sat and waited. Snow followed Rex's lead without fear. Rex accepted the role without pride or force. During walks, Rex stayed alert while Snow explored the world. Snow learned the smells of the street and the sounds of life. Rex never rushed him. Mark walked behind them, watching quietly. At work, Mark felt different. His focus remained strong, but his heart felt lighter. The long shifts felt less heavy. He carried the memory of that night with him. One day, Mark was called to speak at a small gathering of officers. The team wanted to hear about Rex's actions. Mark stood calmly and shared the story. He spoke about the cold night and the silent alley. He spoke about Rex stopping and refusing to move. He spoke about the frozen puppy and the small breath of life. The room was silent as Mark finished. Many officers nodded slowly. They looked at Rex with new respect. Rex sat quietly beside Mark, unaware of the attention. After the gathering, several officers came forward. They thanked Mark and gently touched Rex. Rex accepted the attention calmly. Snow waited outside, safe and warm. At home that evening, Mark sat on the floor with Rex and Snow. He watched them rest together. The memory of the frozen ground returned again. Mark realized how close everything had come to a different ending. He felt a deep wave of emotion rise inside him. He did not stop it. Tears filled his eyes and rolled down quietly. He covered his face and breathed slowly. Rex moved closer and rested his head against Mark's leg. Snow crawled closer and curled beside Rex. The warmth of both dogs surrounded Mark. In that moment, Mark felt complete. He understood that Rex had not acted only from training. Rex had acted from care. That truth stayed with Mark. Snow continued to grow into a healthy and joyful dog. His fur shined, and his energy filled the home. He played gently and rested peacefully. Rex continued his work with pride. His focus never faded. His calm strength remained the same. Snow watched him with admiration. Mark often watched them together and smiled. He felt thankful for every quiet moment. Life had given him something unexpected. The seasons changed, and the snow melted away. The memory of the cold night stayed, but it no longer felt heavy. It felt meaningful. One morning, Mark opened the door and watched Rex and Snow step into the sunlight. The world looked bright and open. A new chapter had begun. Mark knew that some moments shape a life forever. This was one of them. A canine had followed instinct and kindness. A puppy had survived against all odds. And an officer had learned that even in the coldest places, compassion could still be found. The story did not end with tears. It continued with hope.